The Blair Witch Project took the world by storm in 1999, and it's one of my favorite films of all time. You either love it or hate it. I'm curious as to where you stand. The original Blair Witch Project was a story about 3 independent filmmakers who venture into the Black Hills area in Burkittsville, Maryland, to explore the legend of the Blair Witch. They disappeared and were never heard from again, until a year later when their footage was found. The filmmakers of the Blair Witch Project created an online marketing campaign for the movie that sold it as a real story. In the early days of the internet, it was hard to tell what was true and false. The film ended up making $250 million on a $60,000 budget. An absolute success. So of course the studio, Artisan Entertainment, wanted to immediately get to work on a sequel. The final product was Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2. It's important to note that Haxan Films, who created the original classic, wasn't ready to get to work on a follow-up, nor do I think they ever wanted to. Artisan decided to move on without them, hiring Joe Berlinger to direct. He spent time in the real town of Burkittsville, doing research and interviewing the locals about the impact of the film in their town, which was the inspiration for the interviews in the beginning of the film. The movie, in my opinion, is a fantastic horror movie that coexists in the Blair Witch lore. It's not your typical sequel since it strays pretty far from the original story, but imagine it as a secondary story in a series of stories. Let's go through the plot of the movie to see if we can uncover more about what went wrong with Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2. The film opens up with classic text, like the original, explaining that this movie is a dramatic reenactment of the events that occurred after the Blair Witch Project was released. In November of 1999, fans of the original movie flocked to the small town of Burkittsville, and local resident Jeff, who we find out was a former psychiatric patient and obsessed fan, runs a tour of all the locations in the film. We also see graduate student Steven and his pregnant girlfriend Tristan, who are researching mass hysteria. Erica, who is a witch, joins the tour as well. They all meet up with Kim in a cemetery, a goth, and a psychic. Every movie needs a psychic. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Jeepers Creepers. They go on Jeff's tour and camp out at the ruins of the Rustin Parr house from the original movie, with cameras loaded, hoping to catch something supernatural. Jeff becomes confused because he notices a large tree in the center of the house's foundation, claiming that it was not there before. Very spooky. Another tour group shows up to the ruins, but they are quickly shooed away. After partying all night, they awake to Tristan's and Steven's research papers shredded and thrown all over, as well as all the cameras trashed. Come to think about it, why did they bring original documents and all their research papers into the woods? It makes no sense, especially because we learned that they didn't have any backups. It sounds like it's their fault, really. The tapes for all the cameras were found under the house in the same spot the original tapes were found in the Blair Witch Project. Tristan suffers a miscarriage and they rush to the hospital. Tristan then starts seeing images of zombie girls in the hospital room, a hint at what's to come. After this, the group retreats back to Jeff's house. Not sure why they all wouldn't just go home, but anyways. His house is an old factory, which is so cool I would absolutely live there. Tristan then goes to sleep, which is probably why they went there. The group reviews the tapes to see if they can figure out what happened last night. They see Erica dancing around naked, and Erica claims that she has no memory of this and she runs off. Kim consoles her in another room, and Erica reveals rash-like symbols all over her body, to which she finds out that Kim and the rest of them all have them too. And Erica says the group has been marked for death. Kim uses Jeff's van to go into town to get some coffee and alcohol. At the store, she gets into an argument with the cashier, and while driving away, she swerves to avoid a group of children in the road and nails a tree. The kids represent the 7 children Rustin Parr murdered in the Black Hills area back in the 1940s, controlled by the Blair Witch. Later, Kim finds a bloody nail file inside the bottle of beer she bought. The next day, Jeff sees the van out front and it's completely totaled, which is not what we saw. We saw Kim slightly scratch the bumper. Kim insists that the accident was small, and then they realize that Erica is gone and they search the house. Then, weirdly enough, they call her father, to which his secretary says he has no children, which behooves them. While this is happening, Tristan's behavior grows increasingly bizarre. The county sheriff then calls Jeff and informs him that the other tour group they ran into that night was found dead on Coffin Rock. and tells them to stay put. Kim searches a drawer and she finds a set of files on everyone in the group that Jeff created. She of course confronts Jeff and he denies it. The group then finds Erica's corpse inside a closet. Tristan begins speaking backwards and that leads Kim to suggest that they play the tapes in reverse. When they do it, they find footage of the group getting high and drunk, doing a demonic ritual and an orgy led by Tristan. They then murder the other tour group. After seeing this, they freak out and confront Tristan. Jeff then films this interaction because he is convinced that she is possessed by the Blair Witch, hoping to get a confession for Erica's death. She then ties a rope around her neck and taunts the group, daring Steven to push her off the balcony. In a fit of rage, he pushes her and kills her. We then cut to the police station where the group is being interrogated, with each claiming a possessed Tristan was responsible. Their accounts are contradicted by various pieces of tapes and security footage. Kim is shown murdering the store cashier with her own nail file, while Jeff's security cameras show him nude hiding Erica's body in the closet. The footage Jeff filmed during the final confrontation shows her pleading for her life, and they accuse her of being a witch, which ends with Steven hanging her, which of course is not what we saw in the movie. It's a wild story. I love how we saw something different than what supposedly happened in real life. It's a really fun movie in my opinion. Let's discuss the alternate cut for this movie. Well, I hope you're enjoying this video on what went wrong with the Blair Witch Project 2. If you want to support me, head on over to patreon.com/officialjoeyc for all your exclusive Joey C needs. We have exclusive movie reviews, exclusive live streams, exclusive behind the scenes content, man. It's fantastic. Go to patreon.com/officialjoeyc. Alrighty, back to the episode, baby. Artisan forced the director to recut the movie after it was finished and forced him to reshoot certain scenes to add more traditional horror movie elements, which turned it into a more commercial Hollywood film rather than the low-budget look that the original is known for. Also, the scenes of the group murdering the other tour group was shot in the director's backyard just weeks before the film came out to add more horror elements. It was then edited into the movie sporadically as flash cuts, and it was done specifically to add more violence in the film. Furthermore, the footage of Jeff in the mental hospital was shot at the request of Artisan executives. The director later stated that the shots that were added fought against the ambiguity nature of the film he tried to portray. Additionally, the interrogation shots in the film were inserted sporadically throughout the film. In the director's cut, it was originally in a single scene at the end of the film. Multiple fan edits online have since attempted to reconstruct Berlinger's original version of the film. I watched this one, and let me tell you, it's fantastic. If you like this movie, go watch the unreleased director's cut. It's much better than the original. Briefly touching on the reception, it got horrible reviews. It's still regarded in pop culture as one of the worst sequels to a horror movie. There's a long list, but this movie is unfairly placed on that list. This movie is awesome in its own right. It has a cool story, fun characters, and spooky mysteries. In my opinion, I think what happened in this movie was that it fell victim to something so popular, and expectations were so high it couldn't have possibly lived up to the hype and excitement that the first Blair Witch had. If this movie completely got rid of anything Blair Witch inside of it, it would have performed so much better, and probably would have been remembered as a fun late 90s, early 2000s horror movie. The second biggest hit this movie took, besides being attached to the name Blair Witch, was the fact that the studio completely butchered the original version, forcing the director to recut, reshoot, and reorder things in the movie. Comparing the theatrical release and the reconstructed director's cut, you can see a clear difference in storytelling, and it makes a massive difference. It's a massive shame that this movie had to come up against so many roadblocks because it could have been a great movie. I still love this movie, even the original theatrical cut, but it could have been so much better for people who hated this movie. Give it a watch, and let me know what you think of this movie, and what do you personally think went wrong with Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2?